listening to Lori next month. And that'll be Wednesday, October 27th. And that will be the same time. So it'll be 6 o'clock to 8 p.m. on Wednesday, October 27th. Still by Zoom, I'm afraid, but we'll look forward to seeing everybody there. All right. And why don't we go on to the next one? Great. So next we've got our hiring panel here, and I'm going to be turning over to Mike here in just a second. But before we do that, I just want to just say a thank you really quickly to everyone that's here in the panel. First, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. Alvin Kolkind, I know you're going to all of you are going to get introduced here, but I want to thank you for being somebody that came here as someone looking for a job, and now here you are. You're paying it forward each and every week. And it's really great to have you here. Thank you for doing that. Brittany Ritchie Sievers, you're going to be able to sit here and you're going to be checking two boxes. You're going to be talking about like the recruiting piece, but also the hiring manager piece. Appreciate the fact that you're willing to do that for us. It's great to have you with us. Charlie Russell, you've always got so many great ideas and so many great things that you share with folks, and you really put people at ease when you talk to them. So I'm really glad that you're on this panel here. You bring a wealth of knowledge with you. Thank you for taking that time. And Jen Miller, I work with Jen at U.S. Bank. We've been working together on an initiative here recently. It's been great. I appreciate you. Even though we've been working on all this stuff just kind of with our day job, when I kind of blindsided you with this question here a couple weeks ago about being on this panel, I appreciate you just being willing, kind of without really asking any questions, to jump in here and do it. It's great to have you here. I'm really excited to hear what you're going to have to share with everyone this evening. So. All right, Mike, last thing I'm going to say is, you're our go-to expert when it comes to this. You do this better than just about anybody. You too are somebody that has set a tremendous example, not just when you were getting ready to leave the service and how you started looking for a job so far in advance, and everything you did got you to where you are now. You continue to set a great example by your continued coaching and how you moderate all this stuff here. I appreciate the fact that you're a member of the Eagle Group and everything that you do, and your willingness to continue to do this for others when we have these twice a year. I will turn it over to you, sir. I appreciate your assistance.
Thanks, Alan, and I appreciate it. So just quick introduction to everybody. My name is Mike Povick. I was in the service for 22 years in the Army from 1996 to 2018. Did several different jobs during that time, logistics, nuclear, biological, chemical, and I spent the final decade doing modeling and simulation. And so I transitioned in 2018, and it was really tough because I really wasn't quite sure what I was looking for. My resume was a mess, lots of words, no white space to breathe in. And Eagle Group was a huge help for me through that transition process, both professionally, as far as here's how you clean up your resume, and asking me tough questions like, what do you want to do? As well as just emotionally when you go through kind of those challenges of a job search. So it's with great pleasure that I get to be able to help and serve after I landed a role. So for tonight, we have 4 panelists that we're going to be talking with. Then I will ask them to introduce themselves in just a few minutes. Couple admin. Yes, Mike was a hot mess. Thanks, Alan. but he de-hotted me. He cooled me off. So a couple admin things. As far as the audience, if you have questions for our panelists, please put them in the Q&A. We're going to have 2 or 3 breaks throughout this session to be able to address any of your questions. And so without further ado, let's just get started. So we have 4 panelists. Jen, Charlie, Brittany, and Alvin. And Alvin, does your video work? Awesome. Sweet.
Yep. Sorry about that.
Okay, so what we're going to do is with these questions, there's going to be some of them that are going to be group questions for everybody to answer. And some of these questions we're going to break down to just 1 or 2 participants in order to keep the ball rolling. So first question is, please tell us a little about yourself, your company, your position, and why you personally are supporting veterans. And let's start with Jen.
All right. Hey, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Adam, thanks so much for the invite to join. I'm Jen Miller. I am local here to the Minneapolis area, although my family and I just moved to the Twin Cities from North Carolina about a year ago. I currently work at U.S. Bank and have the privilege at U.S. Bank to serve as an alliance leader overseeing multi-tenant partnerships within our consumer and business banking group. And so I have the great fun job of working with other institutions to create partnerships in the banking arena to deliver mutual value with one another. So I am married and have 2 kids, and they are my primary reason for being. I love being a mom, identity number 1, but I also am a career person at heart. I love to work. I love the work that we do, and I love working for US Bank as an organization. I'm a civilian, so I have not served in the military, but I have the utmost respect for those that have and those that make that great sacrifice. So for those of you that are with us today and have served in the military, my sincerest gratitude for all of the commitments that you've made for our great country. So thank you very much for that, and look forward to being a part of the conversation today.
Thanks, Jen. Charlie.
All right, apparently I was muted on the phone. Hey, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. Adam, thanks for asking me for this, and way more detailed that I credit that you gave me for the introduction. But so let me give you guys a little bit of my background. So I spent 25 years in the Air Force, started out as an enlisted guy working on B-1 bombers. And about halfway through, I ended up transitioning and getting commissioned to the dark side. And I spent the other half of my career as a logistics officer. And the most exciting thing about that, when I decided to retire, it was not necessarily my choice. And I basically was in Hawaii. They said, "Hey, we want you to move back to Korea." And I said, "I don't know about that. That really isn't going to work for the family." And I had been to Korea already. Don't get me wrong. We loved it. We loved the idea. But it became a family thing, right? And we said, "I can't do that." And they said, "Okay, see ya." And so, yeah, the Air Force decided it was time for me to go, and I reluctantly agreed. But we ended up trying to figure out what we were going to do for retirement in a very short period of time, like about 4 months. So as you can imagine, I did not have the opportunity to prepare like I had because I wasn't ready to retire. And then I moved to Minnesota from Hawaii. So I had a very huge climate change, and I'd never been here before. So it was quite interesting all the way around. Definitely a challenge. And like Adam, I am a product of the Eagle Group as well. And I came here not really knowing anybody, and had talked with Sheila a few times. And she said, "Hey, we got this group. Why don't you come to a meeting?" And I'd been here like a week. And I was like, "Well, all right. I wonder if this is like, what this is going to be." And showed up, and I'll tell you what, this has been a great opportunity and a great group to help people just get their bearings, get their feet, make connections. And through coming to that very first meeting, a few months later, I was able to land a job at Medtronic, where I am still at today, 5 years later almost. And so for those of you that don't know Medtronic, obviously it's one of the big ones here in town. I'm a senior program manager working in supply chain. I kind of do strategic acquisitions and strategic supply chain projects. So it's a glorified project manager, but Medtronic is nice, and they make us sound more professional by calling us program managers. Another thing that we've got going on is, for those of you that don't know, Medtronic was started about 70 years ago, and its co-founder, Earl Bakken, was actually an Army guy. He had been in the Army, got out, and he started the company after he created the first battery-powered pacemaker. And, that's where it all started. So everything that, that we do at Medtronic can be attributed to the fact that there was a guy that was in the Signal Corps way back in the day and learned something about electronics. So it's definitely pretty cool from that perspective. And there's a lot of us at Medtronic trying to keep that vision of the veteran alive and move that forward. Medtronic does a lot in the medical device world. They're really a tech company, an engineering company that focuses in the med space. And, they have products, and they're placed in 150 different countries where we operate out of. We service about 70 different health conditions, everything from pain stimulants, for people with chronic back pain, cranial items, spine robotics, insulin, surgical tools, all kinds of stuff. So a wide variety. But I think the best part of it is that their mission, and this mission statement has been around for a long time, and it's to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. And really that's what they want to do. And the one nice thing that I've noticed at Medtronic is, I've only been there 5 years, but they really put the mission first. And to me, that made a difference. When I got here and started applying for jobs, I had no idea that was going to be important. But it turns out, when I found Medtronic and ended up getting on there, that's made a big difference for me. So with that, I'll turn it back over and appreciate the opportunity to be on the panel.
Thanks a lot, Charlie. I would say that the Air Force's loss was our gains. So it's good to have you. All right, next is Brittany.
I'm muting myself. Hi, I'm Brittany Ritchie Sievers, and I've been through the transition process. I was not privy to Eagle Group when I got out in 2012 after 10 years in the Army. I never transitioned to the dark side, even after college, because I really wanted to be boots on the ground and get to do my job with the local communities in the Middle East. So I started as a medic in 2002, and 9/11 was 100% the catalyst for me joining the military. I went from being somebody that said, I don't take orders very well, there's no way, this isn't for me, to happily signing a contract in 2002 after I graduated high school. So, and then 10 years later till 2012. So I was a medic, and then I did psychological operations. I did 3 combat tours to the Middle East, and served the country, I think, relatively well. But after 3 tours in 3 years, my family said enough is enough. And so I got out, mostly to not continually stress them out. So then when I got out, 2012, it's kind of hard for people to believe there wasn't a push then to hire veterans. There wasn't any pro-veteran programs really still even that short of a period ago. And so everybody said, yeah, your experience is great, but it's military experience. What are we supposed to do with you? And so I understand the issues with translating your resume from military speak to civilian speak, and all those challenges that that come your way through just kind of learning how to be a civilian and how to fit in the civilian working space. So I currently own my own company, Hire Recruitment. My biggest client, I would say right now, is Sun Country Airlines. I've worked with them for 3 years, and do pretty much all of their hiring. So if anybody's interested in a job on suncountry.com, let me know. And I hire for a bunch of other companies. I'm listed as a diverse supplier with companies like Medtronic and US Bank and things like that. So, and more than anything, I've been there with you guys. I've been through the transition. I know the challenges, and then I have some insider information being a recruiter and a hiring manager. So I can help in many ways, hopefully. So I'm always available. Anybody's welcome to my information. So please reach out. I love helping veterans. So that's about it.
Thanks, Brittany. And thank you for your service. That's an incredibly high number of combat tours in a short period of time. So thank you very, very much. All right, next, Alvin.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thanks for the invite for the panel. I'm homegrown here in Minnesota. I come from a small town, population 34, Dalbo, if you've probably never heard of it, north of the Twin Cities. So when I left for the Navy, I dropped the population by more than 1%. I served a little over 8 years in the Navy as a nuclear machinist mate and radiological controls technician. Since I got out in 2011, I've been in industrial facilities and equipment maintenance management, so for almost 10 years now. Now I'm at Skywater. Skywater is a semiconductor manufacturer, essentially creating microchips just in the backyard of Minnesota. Most people wouldn't even know that it was there. We currently have 2 sites, one in Bloomington, just south of the Mall of America, and recently acquired another one down in Kissimmee, Florida. I currently manage our Bloomington site's facilities department, which operates and maintains everything outside of the 90,000 square foot clean room space. So approximately 1 million square feet of facilities to deal with. Being a veteran myself, it instilled in me, as with most others, to do your best to support your fellow veterans. Beyond that, I feel forever indebted to the Eagle Group to help with the help that I received while searching, which I found my true fit with Skywater, and I just want to keep on passing it forward.
Thanks, Alvin. And your story is an amazing one. There's so much more there. And certainly Skywater and semiconductors are a big deal. They're the toilet paper of the 2021. So if you're buying a car, good luck finding a new car. But we're in good hands with Skywater. All right, so let's get started with the rest of the questions. So this is going to be for everybody. First question, what career opportunities or special programs does your company have that are a particularly good fit for veterans? And what makes your organization an excellent place for veterans to work at? All right, let's go in reverse order this time. And so let's start with Alvin.
Okay. So we have a lot of career opportunities that fit a variety of skills and backgrounds, anything from the fab clean room operation positions, equipment maintenance, and engineering, plant or facilities on my side, maintenance and engineering, design, process, network, IT, sales, engineers in those fields as well, program and project managers, positions in accounting, HR, even engineering interns and paralegal. Though a few positions have some requirements that due to the niche industry of being in the semiconductor field, most don't, and they cover entry to managerial level positions. In plant maintenance, which I handle, and equipment maintenance, which actually Matt Rodnerud is actually on this call as well. He handles that department. I feel that probably holds a really good fit with anybody that's electro or mechanically inclined, which a lot of veterans are. And that's shown by the high percentage, like in my department alone is about 50% veterans. And I would say it's pretty close to the same in the equipment maintenance side that handles the equipment inside of the clean room space. We do quite a bit with third-party training where personnel has interests or skills that need to be strengthened. But we also do work with the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs to allow veterans to utilize their VA benefits while learning new skills in this industry.
Thanks, Alvin. Brittany.
I don't want to take up a bunch of time because there's so many better opportunities with the other 3 panelists, but owning hire recruitment, again, I hire for the VA, the state as a service disabled veteran-owned company. I hire for the VA, the state, Ramsey County, Minneapolis. But my best asset to people who are here trying to get advice on finding a job is networking. So I can connect you or give you advice on how to get in touch with hiring managers pretty much anywhere, or the internal recruiter. At Sun Country, I can say right now we're growing like crazy, and over 50% of that company is military because of pilots, mechanics, airplane mechanics, everybody. And we like to hire our own because we know the challenges. So I'd say over 50% of the people that I hire for Sun Country Airlines are veterans. I actually just hired for one role he worked the Navy recruiting office in Burnsville. So we definitely enjoy hiring veterans, specifically for my client Sun Country, that I have a direct effect on hiring for them day in and day out. I would say jump on their site. They have everything from pilots, flight attendants, maintenance, customer service, work from home customer service. So there's all kinds of opportunities within there. But if you're a veteran who's looking for an opportunity within the government sector, private sector, feel free to reach out to me and I'll help you in any way I can.
Thanks a lot, Brittany. And I'm sure on the government side, there's a lot of veteran connections as well. Let's go, Charlie.
All right. So, Medtronic has traditionally been thought of as a company where if you don't have a degree, you can't get in. And I would say that for a lot of the company, that's true, right? You got to have a college degree, and it's the way they built the company up. It's just kind of the way it works. However, and there are a number of production facilities here in the Twin Cities where we always need people, right? And so one of the things we hear from especially guys that were enlisted is, you guys, everything requires a degree. I don't have that. But our production side doesn't require it. So there's a lot more opportunities out there than people normally think. They normally, just kind of, well, if I don't have this, I can't get into Medtronic. So I want to throw that one out there because people don't realize it. And that's important. So beyond that, we have a number of functions, anything a big business is going to have. You've got finance, supply chain, logistics, transportation, engineering, HR, everything. So all of those things that you can think of that you're going to need to run a business, it's all there. The opportunities vary all the way from, entry level analyst type positions, all the way up the chain. And really, I would say the biggest thing for people to remember is that when you're looking for that opportunity, always look at, what are you good at? Because that really helps, and it's going to help when you start looking for how to fit in. There is a program called Skills Bridge, and essentially that's where people that are about to get out of the military can become an intern, essentially. So kind of like in college, you get to be an intern, or for anybody that kind of went through traditional college, I didn't. But for those that have, there's intern opportunities. And this is a way to do the same thing for the military folks. We had an Air Force guy who, because that was the first guy, was the Air Force guy. So the best thing about that is you get a chance to work in a particular field, and it's like a 6-month interview where you get to work with them and really they understand your capability, you understand what the business is. And we've had a number of folks go through that. I would say we've got about 6 in so far. We've had 1 hired. We've had 2 more that have gone through the program, and 2 more starting here in a couple of months because we just recently kicked it off within the last year. So it's a great opportunity, and the best part about it is it's not that well known. So as we advertise and stuff, I try to make sure I share as much of that as I can so people know that it's out there. In terms of what the company does, it's really good for veterans to make it a workplace there. From a veterans perspective, we have employee resource groups, and we always try to come together and make it available for everyone. And it's not just people that were veterans. We're talking family members. They've got a mother, brother, spouse, whoever. anybody, if you're going to support veterans, those are the people that we want to help out. We want to bring in. So we do a lot for kind of the Guard Reserve folks that end up being activated at times to help them out and be able to, make sure that when they're gone, somebody's checking on their family. Because as you all know, once you get into the civilian side, it's not quite the same. So we want to make sure we're still keeping that that buddy checkup for the rest of our folks and their families. So those are the major things.
Thanks, Charlie. Next is Jen.
Hey, yep, sure. So I would say that first, US Bank is continually voted a top employer for the veteran community. I think we were number 3 last year. And that really, I think, is driven by a couple of key things. Number one, the mission and purpose of US Bank is really a part of what we do every single day. And that's to power potential of, US citizens, right? And that really is, a big part of that is the veteran community and serving the community, the special needs of our veterans community. So, Adam is our leader of that group and thinking through how do we make sure we solve those very specific needs of those community members? And that really is just sort of a part of who we are, right? We're really thoughtful of that specific community and make sure that we serve y'all's needs. The second piece would be, as we think about hiring at US Bank, the desire and the natural inclination is to look at a veteran applicant and to take a careful look at them because of the natural leadership ability that you all possess, your ability to work together, your teamwork, just the natural characteristics of a veteran is something that we as hiring managers take a very close look at. And our recruiting function is the same, right? So there's always a desire to hire out of the veteran community whenever we possibly can. As we think about, resources for our veteran folks, I would just encourage everybody to go to the usbank.com and sign up for the veteran talent community. So there's actually a pool of talent resources that help to place veterans that are looking for employment. And what's cool about that is they care for the special needs. They're helping to think through where they can be placed within the company that can add mutual value. And I think that's really, really cool. And then lastly, I would just say that the biggest part of job placement is networking, and that just can't be said enough, right? So putting yourself out there and connecting with people within the community or at the employer that you want to be a part of is a big part of landing the job. And I know that you all, the veteran community, you are such a close-knit family, and leveraging your network to create those ties into companies that you want to be a part of is absolutely a path that I would recommend. As it relates to opportunities, US Bank's a huge, big, top 5 bank. We run the gamut from our in-store locations, our branch locations, to IT, finance, marketing, product management, really soup to nuts. There's opportunities that span every single level. And not all of those opportunities require a degree. And so I would just encourage you to think about that and put yourself out there for things that, may even say that they require a degree. Submit the application and see if you can have a conversation with a recruiter, because oftentimes it's the soft skills that will overshadow the hard skills, which, at times is that degree. So, yeah.
Thanks, Jen, very much. And I want to get back to that soft skills piece as we go throughout this conversation. All right, next question. So let's talk COVID for a minute. We've a lot of companies have shut down, started back up, kind of slowed their startup and doing a lot of different things. So let's kind of talk about this. So how has COVID-19 impacted hiring at your company, and what hiring trends are you currently seeing? As well as what are your current return to office plans, and where are you along that path? Let's kind of mix things up a little bit. We'll start in the middle this time, and we'll start with Brittany.
Hi. So coming from the recruiting world, I have never been busier in my life. I thought that COVID, when it hit, was going to just tank my business. And it was done from there. I was like, I'm gonna have to go back to school. I need a new skill. What am I gonna do? And it went the exact opposite direction, because people need workers. There were a lot of people that were taken out of the workforce, I noticed over the past few years, whether it was moms or single parents who had to stay home because their kids were homeschooling and there was nobody to watch them, or there were a lot of reasons that, or they were very scared of COVID, or their work that they didn't offer a safe capacity to work in, or they didn't feel safe. So they were able to leave the workforce and be provided help by the government in order to take care of their families and everything. But on the other side, lots of companies have grown like crazy. Some of my largest clients, Sun Country, Amazon, FedEx, those companies have grown like wildfire. So now one of the coolest things about what's happening right now with where we're at with COVID is there's more jobs than there are people looking for jobs. And so employers right now are willing to look at people that they wouldn't have looked at before in general, I've noticed. So that's probably not true across the board of every industry and things like that. But now is the time to kind of take a chance if there's something that you wanted to get into that you didn't think you'd be considered for before. Now is the time. And something that I want to get out before I forget, and I'm not sure if it's going to come up on the question, so I just want to say it, is don't downplay your military schooling, your military trainings. Make sure as you're writing your resume that you're thinking through everything you went through. And when you're in the military, like with me, I was like, oh, I went through the Defense Language Institute, but that's not a 4-year school. So I'm not going to put it on my degree, on my resume. No, put everything, your leadership training, your everything, because maybe that, if you don't have a degree, maybe those trainings in schools will get you that interview. Maybe just having those trainings in schools on there will get you to that interview level where you can show those soft skills that Jen spoke about. So yeah, it's hiring is like crazy. So I'm sure there's a place that you can find a good employment home right now.
Thanks, Brittany. You know, we really are seeing that trend even in the weekly group meetings. There was a point where we had 20, 30 people on virtually, and that number has quickly shifted down, but it really stayed that way for a good six to 9 months. And then it kind of like the pipeline really started opening up. All right, let's go with Alvin.
Yeah, so when COVID first started, we developed a pandemic response team internally in the company, and that was mainly to meet and discuss events as they unfolded, direction as it changed, concerns as they were brought to our attention. And that kind of put us on par, in some cases ahead of the CDC and Minnesota Department of Health. And with that in mind, it changed how the interview process works. So initially it slowed the interview process due to the hurdles in everyone transferring to like a virtual hiring setting. Hiring seemed to pick up pretty steadily once people became accustomed to those new ways. However, as time progressed into where we are right now, the applicants have kind of dwindled. As Brittany was talking about, we're definitely in a case where we have more positions than we're getting applicants. It's been very difficult at all levels and all types of positions. As far as where we're at right now, during the worst of the pandemic, we maximized efforts to work from home. But right now we're almost completely to working back on site. But the event has actually shown throughout the company, certain positions have a decent amount of flexibility and ability to work from home. And I think it has helped communication throughout the company using Microsoft Teams is what we use internally. And I think it's had a decent effect with communication.
Yeah, it is amazing just between Zoom and Teams and all these, how we've learned to live. We're doing this meeting on Zoom, for example, but at the same time that there are critical roles that just have to be filled in person as well. So thank you, Alvin. Let's go next with Jen.
I would agree. I mean, I think COVID has changed absolutely everything, right? And I would also echo that the job market is bananas, right? For lack of a better word. I mean, it's wild out there. There's a ton of opportunities out there, and as I think about even on my team, right, I've got a few opportunities that I've been looking to fill, and the applicant pool isn't as vast as what it once was. And so I just would echo Brittany's comments around now is the time to go for something that even a year ago you would have said like, oh gosh, I never would qualify for that. Now is a great time to put your name in the hat for something that feels a little bit out of your comfort zone. As it relates to the interview process, we've moved more towards a virtual interview process, which as a hiring manager has taken me a little bit of time to get used to, right? I'm used to like, hey, let's shake hands, let's spend some time together in person. But now it's starting to feel more and more natural and more normal, right? And it also aligns more with how we're working together every single day, which is mostly on Zoom meetings. For return to office, we as an organization started entering back into return to office a couple of months ago, and then we had the recent spike with the Delta variant, so we hit the pause button on our return to office. I will say that the interesting thing about the culture of US Bank is we are and will continue to be largely an in-person organization. So almost all of our workforce will in some capacity be in person in some shape or fashion. However, we used to be a 5-day-a-week in-person culture, and now we're more in a hybrid type of culture, which as a working mom is amazing. So the ability to work a bit at home and balance work and life has been a really good value add for many people. So we'll continue to see folks, I would imagine later this year or into the early part of next year, start to work their way into our new working model, which is hybrid. So 3 days in the office, 2 days in home. And we'll see how that goes. The other thing about US Bank is there's no pressure, right? So focus is always first on safety and being comfortable and not putting anyone at risk. And so we'll continue to closely monitor things. And if we have to pull back on any plans, we certainly will. And we'll continue to evolve as we all have through these unprecedented times.
Thanks, Jen. Your comment about hybrid just reminded me we're kind of starting that, and you can tell we're all so out of practice, even just being in a conference room and remembering that you have to hit the microphone button sometimes so people can hear you or to see you, and there is a camera in the room, and so it's going to be an interesting dynamic going forward as we go kind of from a remote workforce or partially remote to more of a hybrid to in person and kind of back again. All right, let's go with Charlie.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny that you mentioned the getting used to going back into the office, Mike, because I was recently at a face-to-face conference, and one of the things they wanted us to do is to keep our laptops there so that we could turn on the video when we were talking to make sure that people could see us. So it's a little strange, but it's the world we live in now. And like everybody else, Medtronic had, the standard COVID challenges. People went home. They had to bring production back, which was really the thing that pushed them forward. And, that it made some challenges, right? Because the production facility, I'm sure, Alvin see that too, is that you've got to have people in place. They've got to work. They've got to figure out how to manage dealing with each other in a confined space and in clean rooms, and how do they all work that? So those folks went back to work pretty quick. Then they were back in, they were doing their job. The rest of us, I've been working out of my basement now for 14, 15 months, whatever it is. But going back into a hybrid format here here at kind of the end of the month, and it's going to be interesting, right? None of us has been in there. I don't even remember what my cube looks like. I know I had some stuff. I'm just wondering what's still there or if anything's moved, right? And I probably have to dust, I would imagine. It's going to be a bit of a mess. But other than that, from the hiring perspective, hiring's kicked off. Like everybody's saying, it's pretty big right now. A lot of people are moving, and we've lost a number of folks unexpectedly that we didn't anticipate. And trying to backfill them and get someone in that place is hard. And, you know, doing the video interviews and, you know, all those kinds of things are a little strange. You know, I remember the last interview I was doing, the lady's dog was just going crazy. And so, you know, we had to pause the interview for a few minutes so she could deal with her dog. And that's just the world we live in now, right? And it's what we have. It's how we manage. And, you know, you know, one of the things when you look at those video interviews, you know, like everybody else does, I'm like, oh, all right. So I see Mike likes Green Lantern, you know, what else? But then you also do that when you're on an interview. Okay, what's the background look like? Because, you know, that's just what people look at. And so it's interesting to see how our dynamic has changed. And we're all really curious about the other person more than just what they're talking about, right? What's their environment say about them? And so I guess that's the big thing that I've noticed with the transition to that video and recruiting environment. What I would say is that even if we can't do in person, you're going to be doing video interviews for a long time, because now people know how it works and they're not going to get rid of it. So I guess if you're going to do an interview, make sure you have an appropriate background. But yeah.
Know your audience to know your background.
Yeah.
You know, I was just thinking that when the shutdown occurred, I think the first time I went into the office was at about 6 to 7 months later. And I went to my desk and my calendar still said March, you know, 2020, and it was already like October. It was just one of those weird, eerie, you know, apocalypse type moments. All right, let's go with one more question before we go to audience questions. So let's talk, in addition to your company website, what other ways should veteran job seekers learn and stay informed on career opportunities at your organization? Also, what are some proactive steps you recommend job seekers take that they may not be aware of? All right, and let's start for this one. Let's start with Charlie.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I would say proactive. Well, let's go back to other than the company website. And I think Jennifer brought it up earlier, is sign up for the alerts, right? That's a big deal, because if it's something that's in your career space, you'll get that notification as soon as it's posted. And the best part about that, and you know, if you apply quickly, you're in the pool early. And what I have seen, and you know, I'm sure you know Jen and Brittany can probably attest to this at least a little bit, is when the hiring managers first post a job there and they get that influx of candidates that come in the first couple of weeks, if they find a few good ones, they're not going back to the well unless those don't pan out. So if it's a month in or a couple months in on a job and you decide, hey, I just saw this, I want to apply, not that you're not qualified and you might be the best candidate out there, but the hiring managers might never go back because they already have some people they're looking at. So, you know, sign up for those alerts, because that will keep you getting the notifications as soon as you can so that you can be an early applicant. And then I guess when we talk about proactive steps, I would say the biggest one I could think of is learn the corporate speak. Understand the language of the people that you're going to be talking to and working with. You know, remember, vets are only like 1% of the workforce, and there's no major bases here in Minnesota. So even the people that are veterans, there's very few that are out there actively in the job market, and the likelihood of you coming into a veteran hiring manager is pretty slim. So, you know, do the recruiter a favor, do the hiring manager a favor, learn the corporate speak, learn to be able to relate everything in a way that makes sense to them. Because expecting them to understand what a deployment means, we're asking a lot of people that just don't get it, right? And no fault of their own. It's just the nature of the beast. They've never dealt with it. They don't understand it. So, you know, let's not expect them to have that. What I would say is that one of the other things I always like to ask people when we're doing an interview is what they want me to know that might not be represented in their resume. right? So you have an elevator speech. You've got that pitch that you're ready and you know what you want to say. And you also know that when you looked at your resume and you submitted it, there's probably a whole slew of things about you and related to that job that you would really love to be able to put them, but you can't quite fit it in a resume and it doesn't really make sense. So the best thing for you to do is have that why I'm great for this job that's not in my resume elevator pitch is the best way I could describe it, so that when they give you the opportunity to ask a couple questions, you have to ask a couple, and there's things that you want to know, but give yourself some time to throw out your elevator pitch on what skills you have that your resume doesn't reflect, because that can really make a big difference in you being able to present yourself, especially when we talk about those soft skills, right? You wanted to bring that up later, Mike, and I think that's one of the things that you've got the opportunity to identify some of those things and be able to bring it up. Like Brittany had mentioned, all the schooling that you did. I kid you not, I spent 63 weeks of in-residence leadership training throughout my career. That's a hell of a long time. Most corporate positions might get 2 weeks, maybe 3. So if you can express that in a way that is valuable to the hiring manager, keep that in mind and take the opportunity to make sure they know. But all right, that's what I've got.
Thanks, Charlie. That's great advice. Let's go next, Jen.
So I would encourage a look at LinkedIn. So that's a great social networking tool that's directly related to career and employment. And I use LinkedIn all the time. There's very rarely a message that I get in LinkedIn that I don't respond to. And so that's a great opportunity, not only to hear firsthand of opportunities across companies that you're looking to gain employment at, but also a great opportunity to connect with people who can directly influence hiring decisions at that company. So I would encourage a lot of use on LinkedIn. I would spend time beefing up your LinkedIn profile, and all of the great advice that both Charlie and Brittany have given around taking your military experience and translating that into civilian speak. I can say firsthand as a civilian, that would be really important for me, because much of what you endured and the experience and all that you went through in your military career, to Charlie's point, would be nothing to me, right? So translating that in a way that is digestible for someone who isn't familiar with the vernacular, really, really important. So I would spend a lot of time on that, and follow the companies that you're excited about learning more about, and connect with people in that company that would help you land a job and either make other connections for you at that company, or be able to directly influence hiring decisions at that company.
Thanks, Jen. Great advice. Next, Alvin.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Jennifer just said. We have a pretty decent, at Skywater, we have a pretty decent presence on LinkedIn, and providing business updates to gain information about Skywater, as well as the career opportunities. So that's a good source for the early applicants. There's a few of us that stay pretty active, and including with the Eagle Group as well. So the networking works well within our company as well, with that aspect. The proactive steps, it kind of coincides with that. Provided that you're not doing the always proved or tried and proven to fail method of just shotgunning your applications out there. Learning a little bit about the companies that you're applying for, it goes a long way. And the same can be said with the interviewing process. Using LinkedIn, for example, finding out information about the people that are doing the interview. Little things like that can get you stuck in their head. Just retouching up on the proofreading your resume so it can be clearly understood by civilians. I know it's one of the top ticket items on Tuesday meetings. That and doing your sales pitch, and being able to do mock interviews to be able to make sure that you're leaving out those TLAs the weird verbiage that you can have in the military, and having it in a having your communication clear for the civilians to understand. It's the best way to keep your resume out of that garbage file. So
terminology can be such a challenge when you're transitioning, and one of those pieces is really letting somebody else look at your resume before you turn it in. So great points, Alvin. All right, let's go with Brittany.
So I agree with everything everybody said. I just want to give mostly an anecdotal description, just to maybe, I don't know, give you some ideas of where you may be missing things from your military career and not putting them on your resume, because I still to this day am guilty of that. So when I think about everything I did in the military, like I was the equal opportunity officer. Is that on my resume? No. Should it be? Yes. I was the air NCO. I was the training NCO, all these things. I did all these schools, all these trainings, the JFK Special Warfare Center in schools, all these things. You have all these awards. Let people know. And now is not the time to not ask for help. You're looking for a job, scream it from the rooftops. Everybody you meet, I'm Brittany. I'm looking for a job. I'm fresh out of the military. Who are you? Now is not the time to hide. Let it all out there. The people around you right now are your standing army, and they're there to help you. So whether it's your family, your friends, your veteran colleagues, the Eagle Group, whoever, they're your standing army in your civilian life, and you need to take advantage of them to help you have success. And so looking at them like that as your kind of brother and sisters in arms in your new life, that's what they are. And give them the opportunity. And I think they'll stand up to that. So just, and when it comes to terminology, the military has really taken care of this for you. If you go on, or if I go on army.com, I think it is, and I look up my MOSs, my military occupational specialties, they have them translated to the civilian speak for me, because when they're trying to attract people from the civilian world, they need to do vice versa, what we're doing. They need to translate it from the military to the civilians, for the civilians to understand what they want to do in the military. So use those resources. You can just Google your school sometimes, or your MOS, or whatever you're looking for. If you're really trying to figure out how to translate it, Google it. And then also, I think it's your ACE transcripts kind of give you an idea of what your military training would translate to in the civilian world. So that's my biggest advice closing out.
Brittany, was that ACE transcripts?
I believe that's what it's called. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's a transcript translation where you can request your transcripts from the military, from your all the trainings that you had to go through, be translated into civilian credits or civilian equivalent. So basic training has I think physical training, you could get your FIED college credits or whatnot. So the military does it can be hard to find, but there are places to have this stuff established for you, or to get help in that translation. And then you could even take your ACE transcripts into an interview. I'm from the military. I know it can sometimes be hard to translate what I've done or the trainings I've been through. So this is what the military says my training is equivalent to in the civilian sector.
Okay. All right. I'll have to look up that one, because that's a big one. All right. It's audience question time. Dun, dun, dun. All right. Let's go with the first question. Comes from Greg. How do companies view transitioning veterans who want to pivot to a new career path without direct experience in their military job titles, or a bachelor's, master's in a specific field? Do entry level job to get experience, or back to school full time? So again, it's how do companies view transitioning veterans who want to pivot into a new career path? And are they looking at entry-level jobs to get the experience, or should they go back to school? All right. And at this point, I'm just going to open it up to whoever wants to answer.
I could provide my kind of viewpoint on this. At Skywater, I mentioned before, we work with the VA, with veterans specifically. We can allow for basically an apprenticeship. In essence, you would end up starting in an entry level position if that was your interest, but it would have an offset pay, so you're not feeling that struggle while you're learning the skills in that position. Along with that, I mean, internally we have a lot of cases where people just change their interest, and they're supported throughout the company with different programs, internal training. Usually that's more applicable to whatever your current job is, but also degree program, tuition assistance and whatnot. So a little bit of a mix of both, I think.
Great tips, Alvin. Anyone else?
I think it's hard.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, you got it.
I would say, just from my personal experience over the past, how many years have I've been out? 9 years. It's hard to do a complete pivot. So if you don't have any experience, it can be challenging to make a 180 pivot. And in that case, you should expect, I would say, to kind of start in an entry level role. And I mean, unless you were doing an apprenticeship like Alvin was speaking to, where maybe you aren't starting at a completely entry level role while you're learning those skills. But it is hard to do 100% pivot unless you're have a plan of how you're going to do that. I would say that could be a little challenging.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. That one's kind of tough. The thing to consider, for example, before I got out, I made sure I got myself set up to get my PMP. Had no idea what the heck I was going to do. Didn't even know if I wanted to be a project manager, but I thought, if nothing else, I don't have to be the expert at something, right? Because that's kind of the challenge. And when you come in and you say, hey, I'm going to be a finance guy, but you've never done anything in finance other than balance your checkbook, that's a hard sell. But even if, I think the question talked about supply chain and project management, some of those things you've already done, you just don't know it, and you just have to quantify it correctly. That's the biggest challenge. So if I look at project management, do you care what your kind of project you're managing? Because all the skills that you have that you learned, you can apply. So I went logistics. I said, hey, I know this. I want to be a project manager in this field because I've got enough of a grasp that I can run a project, because there's going to be people helping me that are experts. I don't have to be that guy. There's other people that can help. So I guess, not to say it depends, but look at what your goal is so that you can figure out what the right thing, because anytime you transition out of the military, it's a new career. It's all starting over. It's going to be painful and it's going to suck to a certain extent. But if you embrace the challenge and then figure out how to use those skills that you already have, you can make it incredibly less painful for yourself. But if you're a guy that was a truck driver and you're determined that you want to be a finance guy, then, like Brittany said, you might have to start back towards the bottom just because you don't have the background.
And I would just add, to own it, right? So as a hiring manager, there's nothing I love more than someone that raises their hand and says, I'm hungry to learn something new. And I don't have a lot of experience here, but I'm excited about this opportunity. I want to dive in. I'm hungry to learn more. I'm passionate about this work. And so I would say, don't hide behind the fact that you don't have all of the right experiences and check every single box on the job description. Own the fact that you don't, but articulate your passion and your interest to learn. And I can guarantee you that the hiring manager will take a look at that and say, there's a lot of heart there, and there's something to be said about that.
Muted. Mike, you're muted.
Great tips, everybody. There's a book called Reinventing You, and it really talks about making these big transitions. And other ways to leverage things is things like getting education or certifications, taking volunteer roles to build up your skill set, because most volunteers can't be fired, most. And there's a lot of different ways. And the other piece is, says, don't look at it, even if you do have to take a step down, don't really look at it that you're taking a step sideways, and the only way you're going to go up, if you're going to go sideways, is starting somewhere. All right, let's keep moving on to the other questions. So we're going to change the format here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question for one of you, and then we're going to keep moving through the questions that way. So this first question, actually, on these first ones, we're going to do two of you. So first question is for Brittany and for Jen. Now, let me get to the questions here. For the screening stage, what makes a resume stand out, and how do you balance direct qualifications or lack thereof with soft skills? Lastly, what are the no-nos in a resume? I almost said restaurant. What are the no-nos in a resume that you need to avoid? And let's start with Jen.
All right. So as you're thinking about, when I'm looking at resumes, right, what I look for is clear articulation of exactly what the job was and what successes and the experience, the applicant had with that specific role. I would avoid a lot of words. I would avoid a lot of frill and fuss, right? Simple, clean statements is what I would recommend. Mike hit on the fact, I think it was Mike, right, that your resume had a whole bunch of words on it, right? Simple, clean statements is really, really important. And I think even, I do this as I'm looking at my own resume. How can I cut words out? Like, always anchor on how can you cut words out? That would be my recommendation on your resume. And as you think about actual skills versus soft skills, I might be a little bit unique in this way, but for me, it's much more about the conviction the person has with their communication style and the sort of passion they have around the job and the energy that they bring into the conversation when we're connecting than it is about taking every single job qualification, right? So I would rather take someone that has all of the soft skills and only 50% of the qualifications, rather than someone who has 50% of the soft skills and all of the qualifications checked. For me, it's much more about the interpersonal skills, building relationships. What I perceive to be is the ability to collaborate really well. Someone who I feel like has the same core values as the company and is aligned with purpose and mission. Those are the types of things that, as a hiring manager, I find really important. And I would not underestimate how important it is to just come in and be able to articulate why you're interested in the job and why you think you're a good fit. So Charlie talked about elevator pitch. Elevator pitch is important. So practice your elevator pitch a ton before you go into any conversation. Just leave that hiring manager with a very clear idea of why you're interested in the job and why you're a perfect fit for it.
And I agree with everything Jen said. Coming from two different sides, so the recruiter side and the hiring manager side, the challenge there can be you have to write your resume to get to the hiring manager, to get to the Jen. And the gatekeeper for that is usually the recruiter. And the recruiter's looking for those qualifications, those requirements in the job description. And so in order to be moved to Jen or be moved to the hiring manager, you need to make sure that you're kind of right. I always suggest to people, if they know exactly what they're looking for, if there's certain jobs that they're really interested, to write their resume to fit that job description. So if they're looking for certain keywords, make sure those are in your resume, as long as they actually fit you. Don't create a fake resume, but definitely make sure you're matching your resume to call out those keywords and call out those things that clearly are needed for this job, and to get you to that interview process with the Jens of the world, with the hiring managers of the world.
Thanks, Jen and Brittany. Great points. All right, the next is going to be for Charlie and Alvin. What are the top reasons why candidates fail at a phone screen? And how does a candidate demonstrate soft skills through the hiring process? Let's start with Charlie on this one.
All right. So if we kind of go with the soft skills, if you say that you're a great communicator and you're stumbling over every word and all of, you can't make a coherent sentence, it's probably not going to play too well. But what I would say is this is where you take that kind of elevator pitch on your soft skills and demonstrate, what you've done in the past. For example, if you say that you're comfortable communicating at all levels of the business, give an example. Did you brief a general? Everybody knows the general's high up, right? That one's pretty safe. We can assume that people would know that. So you could say, I frequently on a deployment, you can kind of, weave this in, on a deployment, I was the weekly briefer to the 4-star, the equivalent of the CEO about statuses related to whatever it was that you had to do. So use that to tell a story, right? Because when every question that you answer for the recruiter or the hiring manager is a story and opportunity for you to tell. So the questions are relatively standard. So have a story ready for every line on your resume and be able to tell the story, show that leadership skill, and really you got to own your resume. I would say that's the biggest thing so that you can do that. And, some of the reasons candidates fail on the phone screen, it'll be pretty obvious if your resume and your skill set don't match. And so some people will try to pad some things. I mean, one of the things I did, I applied for a role at one time and it was a bit of a reach and I kind of could make it work, but not really. And then when we got to the phone interview, I knew, this is not me. I could kind of do this, but not what they want, not at the level they're asking. And it was pretty evident. And I knew it, they knew it. We never talked again, and that was okay. But keep that in mind. So one of the things, people are either too casual, they use the wrong kind of lingo. If you're using military jargon and you're just throwing it in every other word, not going to play well. So that would be my thought. So.
Thanks, Charlie. Alvin?
Yeah, agree with a lot of what Charlie had said. Do the targeted questions for the soft skills to figure out about team interactions, accomplishments, and goals. What I like to do specifically is try to do side or filler questions, somewhat unrelated, to try to get the candidate to open up, relax, and see if it's we can relate. So I can get a better feel for what the candidate might actually be like, because sometimes the candidate will be in kind of like a shelled or very nervous state. And as far as the top reasons where I've seen candidates fail at phone screens, failure to answer call. So if you have a schedule, stick to it. A lot of us are familiar with sticking to a schedule, so it's usually not a problem. But that's the job market. Distracted during screening. If you're scheduled, try to make sure that you're in a quiet area, that you're not going to be distracted by other things. And I've also seen people that didn't, like Charlie said, didn't really meet the requirements. Usually, if you're at a phone screen, you should have conveyed something in your resume showing that you met the requirements, but every once in a while, it doesn't exactly align the way it's supposed to.
Hey, thanks, Alvin. All right, let's talk about the interview itself. So the candidate's gone through the phone screening. Now we've moved on to the interview, maybe in person, maybe it's video. We're going to talk about that in a second here and those differences. We're going to change the format up a little bit here to keep us moving forward. So this is going to be just an individual. So the first question is going to be for Brittany. During an interview, what are you looking for? What makes a candidate stand out as someone that you would want to hire?
I would say personability. If you know the person you're interviewing with, research them. I always tell people, like, full disclosure, I LinkedIn stalked you. Like, use all the information out there to find out more about them. What do you have in common? How can you find common ground or share a little bit more about your story with them because you have something in common? So I would definitely do your research beforehand. And that's probably my biggest piece of advice. That's really how you're going to break down that wall. Definitely make sure you're answering questions in a concise manner, not like rambling on. And yeah, just be present. I think Alvin's advice of being focused and in a like place where you can give it your full attention is really important. And if you've made it to the stage where you're talking to somebody, you're already light years ahead of the rest of the pool, more than likely. So the second you're talking to somebody, you should feel confident that they're giving you, they want you to tell them a reason to move you forward to the next step. And it's really a great opportunity. So when you're moved forward to that, take advantage of it. That's about it.
Thanks, Brittany. Next question. Let's go with Charlie for this one. What should candidates avoid doing during the interview?
What should they avoid doing? Something that I catch myself doing is a lot of ums and ahs. I would say if you need to think, that's fine. Take some time to pause. The other thing is, I would say, make sure that you're answering the question they're asking. Sometimes it's easy to get off track because maybe it doesn't quite fit your experience or what you were thinking of, but not answering the question is as bad as, or giving a bad answer is almost worse than just saying, I don't have a good answer for you, right? Because then it looks like you're trying to fake it, and that's never going to play well. If it's actually, I guess, whether it's in person or not, dress for the role, right? Be there and be present so that you're ready to go. Show them that you have that desire to be in the role, because if not, it will be pretty obvious. We had a candidate come in for a role for a pretty reasonably manager position in a sweatshirt. And I thought, yeah, I know this is video, but dude, you could have at least put on a button-up shirt. That would have been helpful. So those are a few things I would say to avoid doing in an interview.
Great tips. Thank you. Next question will be for Alvin. And this kind of piggybacks off of that previous one. But do you have any specific advice on video interviews?
Oh yeah, great point about the shirt. I'm definitely not one to dress up, but I know the time and place to at least put a button up on. That's about as far as I go with dressing up, though. Test your setup before the interview. If this is a video interview, make sure that your lighting and your sound is adequate. It's not all blurry, and the person can actually hear you. There's whatever format you're using or whatever software you're using, there's going to be some kind of form of testing that you can do. And again, this kind of goes into the distraction thing. Try to be in a relatively quiet area with no distractions. That can convey a bad image, or in some cases it'll make it so they can't even hear your answers. So
Great. You know, so there's an audience question here, and I think it really applies to where we are at in the conversation. So this one's going to be for Jen. You're going to get like the triple question. Does practicing your interview matter, or can you come in and just wing it? And can hiring managers tell if you are prepared?
Do not wing it. Don't wing it. You should practice, absolutely. And I would say, some of the typical questions are going to be around, what are you most excited about with this job, or why are you interested in this job, or tell me about yourself. Can you walk me through your resume? Those are things that you should just practice and be able to roll those types of answers right off your tongue. And I'll tell you, there's absolutely cues that indicate that the person that you're interviewing has not prepared for the conversation. I love the tip that Brittany gave around LinkedIn stalking. I'll tell you, when I'm having conversations with folks, I love that they already know about me and my career, and that they're asking me about, roles that I've had or my experience with certain things, because to me that shows that their homework was done. They're clearly invested and interested in the role, and they took time outside of the conversation that we were having to prepare for the session. So I would say absolutely prepare. I would over prepare because the person that you're connecting with will absolutely notice if you haven't taken the time to prepare prior.
Great. There's another question, and I think I'm going to send this one to Brittany. Who was the most impressive candidate you interviewed recently, and what made them stand out? Not looking for specific names, but really kind of explain what happened and really why did they impress you?
So this actually happened to me today. I was interviewing somebody for Sun Country for a role that they definitely had were probably the most experience of any of our candidates, but because of their experience, they fell out of the salary range a little bit just for ours. Like, they were a little bit senior. But the questions that he asked about the airline industry and about promoting from within, and these are the things that are of interest to me. Like, I'm looking forward, I'm looking 5 years from now, and I'm not 100% like this moment is all I care about. So he was asking me a lot of really cool questions about the airline industry, about the managers, about room for growth. And I could just tell he had his head on his shoulders and really was interviewing me as much as I was interviewing him. And I thought that was super impressive, and so impressive that I sent a note to the head of one of the departments and said, we may not be able to afford him in this role that he applied for, but you need to talk to him for one of your open roles. You at least have to have the conversation with him. So that happened just today. So I would say, do your homework on the company too, other open roles. Have your list of questions that you want to know about the company. Know that you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And that really can give them confidence as well on your professionalism, your future with the company. Like, is this somebody that's going to be in here for 2 years, 3 years, and then gone, or is it somebody that is going to want to grow with us? So again, doing your homework is really important, especially if you get that opportunity for a phone interview or an in-person interview. Use it wisely, and one of the ways that you can do that is definitely doing your homework.
Great. I love just that kind of that long-term outlook and kind of the benefit of that. And it can be really hard when you're making that transition, because you may be just thinking about what am I going to do in the next month, not to say the next year or the next 5 years, but that attitude, that long-range vision is really, really important. And it does really show when you've thought that through. So wonderful tips. Okay, let's go back to the scripted questions here. This next question is for Jen. We're going to talk about the offer stage. So you've gone through the phone screening, you've gone through the video interviews. Congratulations. Now you're getting extended an offer. So Jen, when you extend an offer to a candidate, what should they know? What can they ask or negotiate within reason? And what should they avoid doing?
I would say that they should know that the hiring manager is as invested in them as they are in the job, right? So by the time a hiring manager has selected a candidate, they want that candidate and they feel that that candidate will serve their need. They've connected with that person and they're as invested in you as you are in them. And that's important to know because as you move into the salary negotiation or the compensation negotiation phase, I would say there's absolutely room to negotiate. And this goes out especially to women because in all of the people that I've hired, men always negotiate and women never do. And it's such a shame, right? But you absolutely can negotiate. But I would say pitfalls to avoid in the negotiation is oftentimes as you're working with the recruiter during the pre-screen process, the recruiter asks you for your salary expectations. And so, candidly, right, if I make an offer to someone and I'm within their range and in the high end of the range, it feels a little weird if they come back and ask for something that falls outside of the expectations that they gave me previously, right? So I think it's important to really think through when that recruiter asks you what your salary expectations are. Put out there what you would be willing to accept, right? And if that hiring manager comes back to you with an offer that falls within that range, if you want to go above that or change the previously provided answer, have a good explanation for that, right? Like, hey, I've learned a bit more about the job. This is going to be a little bit more, a little bit more intense than what I expected, and because of that, I'm going to need a little bit more than what I previously indicated, right? Sort of own that, but have a reason for that. So I would say negotiation, absolutely acceptable. Just be thoughtful of how you position the need for a change if you've given a number previously.
Great, wonderful. Thank you. All right, the next question is for Alvin. So congratulations, you accepted the offer. Now let's talk about onboarding. And so the next couple questions are going to be about onboarding. So Alvin, how do you help military employees get up to speed within your organization, particularly if they're coming from a background where they may not have that same level of experience and they're kind of picking up and catching up on experience?
Yeah, so I feel like our training and our qualifications are actually set up very similar to the qualification processes in the military. I think that has something to do with our heavy military presence within the company. It was something I noticed pretty much right away when I started with Skywater. I think that helps a lot with that transition because if anybody's been, I'm sure it's probably from company to company. There's probably some cases similar, but it's almost a different language that's being spoke in the semiconductor industry. The TLAs, the three-letter acronyms run rampant, and those are very difficult things to do to get over. But being familiar with those coming from the military as well, cheat sheets, and they're available too. So I think we're set up pretty well. We have peer trainers, which is something that is similar to what I've experienced being in the military. And we keep up with the new hires with 90-day and 30-day, 90-day checklists, progress reports every 60 days for 180 days. I think we do quite a bit to try to keep up with the candidates to make sure that they're getting up to speed and staying on the right track.
That's awesome. Next question is for Charlie. Charlie, what advice do you have for a new hire to do in their first 90 days?
Yeah, the first 90 days are critical. It's a little tough, right? Because it's new, it's awkward, you're excited, but you really don't know what's going on. And probably the first thing you're going to do after some kind of orientation is have to sit in front of a computer and do a bunch of training. So it's tough. But what I would say is come up with your 90-day plan. If I was to give kind of a rough estimate, know who you need to talk to, meet everyone in your organization, understand their role, kind of do basically an interview, right? A little 20-minute, I'm sure you guys have all heard, the 20-minute, interview, right? Do that with all the people that you're going to work with so you can understand where they're coming from. Change the focus, but do it so you understand them. Talk to your boss and understand the pain points that they need you to solve, because that's how they're going to grade you, right? What's important to your boss, that's how you're going to get graded. Take the time to learn the business. One of the things that I didn't do when I first got at Medtronic that I wish I had was learn the product line, learn the things that you're supporting. That can be a huge benefit to you when you're talking to people in other areas of the business, because if they're very vested in their particular product, but you have no idea what they're really talking about, it's really hard to make that connection with them and understand what their needs are. So look at your immediate group, who's your peer group that you're going to be working with them, get to understand them, understand your boss, get an interview with the one over just so you can talk to them and understand what's important to them. And I would start there. The big thing is learn the company, learn the people you're going to be working with. And then once you kind of have that, the other thing I would say is if you have any specific skills that you need to work on or that you need to build up, focus on that, right? So that way, by the time you hit those 90 days, you know everybody, you know their role, you've brushed up on the skills that maybe you didn't realize were going to be critical, and you're really ready to take off and be productive.
Excellent tips, Charlie. Thank you. Also in the chat, Sheila put something too, is that give yourself some grace to know that you're in a learning phase. Coming from the military, you've been a high performer and subject matter expert. You can't be that at day one in your new company. So give yourself the time to learn and grow into your position. And so that's some excellent advice as well. And lastly, understand that the higher your position, the bigger that your problem that you're going to have to get your head around. So just it's all can be complicated stuff. And so give yourself that breathing space. Okay, next question is career advancement. So let's now, we're kind of done with, well past the 90-day phase. And so this question's for Jen. What resources are available to help your military employees progress in their career and develop professionally within your organization?
So I would say that we have at US Bank a pretty robust BRG, which is a resource group, an employee resource group for the military personnel. And I would, that's a really big community of people that are like-minded and come from a similar walk of life. So connecting with that crew is something that I think would be really helpful and really beneficial. But I would also say that just connecting across the company broadly, whether it's with a civilian or military personnel, will greatly help your career at any company. And so again, back to networking. So you work closely with a crew of people on your day-to-day job and figuring out how to build connectivity across the company with folks that are either in your group or outside of your group, and creating a bit of a network of people within the company will help you to advance your career. And I would say, don't be afraid to put yourself out there if there's a certain skill or discipline or, business that you're interested in learning. Put yourself out there and try to get experience within that certain discipline, and that will help you to advance your career as well, not only because you're gaining the skill, but because people will recognize that you're raising your hand, you're wanting to grow, you're wanting to learn, and you're wanting to evolve. And those types of things will help to showcase your leadership team that you're vested and that you want to continue to grow within the company.
Excellent advice. Oh, Charlie.
Hey, Mike, can I throw one thing in there to add on to that one? I just wanted to say that advancement might always be where you want to go, right? If you look around the business and you see that there's people that are running around with their heads cut off all the time and they're always super busy, oh, well, I want to get to that level. Look at that. Maybe you don't want to get there, right? There's that balance of, work and life. So that way you can pick the career path within the company that fits you. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that maybe you don't always have to advance to be comfortable with what you're doing and enjoy it. So,
Charlie, I love that you said that. You know, one of the biggest changes when you leave the military is realizing that you have the power to say no. And that's a level of control that you don't realize you didn't have when you were in the military. So kind of understanding yourself, your own personal goals, you know, how do you balance your life, are also critical. So excellent advice. All right, last question, and this one's for Brittany. So this is a little bit higher level, you know, question. It's really about taking a look at that whole process. You know, for many, the hiring process can be an overall poor candidate experience, time consuming and especially frustrating. The end-to-end process can drag on, and sometimes you feel like you're in a black hole with the communications. What recommendations do you have for job seekers to control their own destiny and influence timely follow-up on their candidacy?
So my suggestion here starts with Jen's initial point of networking. Having advocates within the companies cannot be overstated. Finding people on LinkedIn who can get your resume viewed. I've had people call me who knew I was a recruiter and say, hey, do you know anybody at Eaton? Or hey, do you know anybody at US Bank or whatever? And the fact that I can get their resume in front of somebody who will make sure the hiring manager reviews it or it doesn't get stuck in a pile. Those are the kinds of things that you need to work at. Who can be your advocate through that process within that company, or who knows somebody within that company that can connect you? Look on LinkedIn and see what shared connections you have, to see who can help you make that connection, to not be 1 in 100, but to rise up to the top. Networking is so important. Resume writing. You can also, lots of companies have like generic internal email addresses. Like Sun Country has recruiting@suncountry.com. And if you can find that generic email box, you can usually email, like I every day for Sun Country get emails forwarded to me from that recruiting box for roles that I'm responsible for filling. And it'll be people saying, hey, I applied for this role, just wondering where I am in the process. And I don't know, I can't speak to recruiters in all companies, but I always get back to every candidate that messages me in that way, even if it just to let them know at least where they are, or we're at this part of the hiring process, or we're reviewing resumes still, or we're doing this. Thank you for checking in. But just making your name more than 1 in 100 or whatever, by even just having that small contact can really make the difference. But I can't overspeak networking, hollering from the rooftops that you're looking, also looking for companies that are veteran friendly. There's like yellow ribbon cities, counties, stuff like that, that really put veteran resumes to the top. So making sure that that's very apparent on your resume is also really important.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So there's a couple questions in the chat, but I wanted to address one specifically, and this is for whoever wants to answer it. Do corporations view differently those that are transitioning from active duty versus those still serving in the reserves?
I think it depends on the company and whether or not those particular people know the difference. Because unfortunately, we had a VP that got hired in, and he was like, oh, he thought being retired out of the Air Force and being an Air Force Reserve guy was basically the same thing. And it was like, no, they're different. Let me explain why. So they don't always know. And if that's one of the things, make sure they're going to accommodate you, is what I would say. Just make sure that you're clear with them on what that means.
Yeah, just to touch on that, because we work with a couple of people that are currently in the reserves. making sure that the position does have that flexibility, like Charlie was saying, is a very vital thing. Sometimes it's possible, and sometimes it's not. So, getting that out in front is definitely something that you'd want to do.
Thanks. Okay, we're at the end of our time for this section, so just checking to see if there's any other questions. I think we're good to go on these right now. If we didn't get to your questions, could I ask my panelists if they're willing to put their contact information in the chat so people can reach out to them? And while you guys are doing that, I just want to thank you so much for spending the evening with us, having this conversation. You know, we look out some of these windows, it was daylight when we started, and now it's dark. So I know time is valuable, so we just appreciate it greatly. All right, at this point, we're going to turn it back over to Adam, and I'm going to go back to the slides.
Thanks a lot, Mike, and thank you very much to the panel. This was really, really great. A lot of great perspective, a lot of great information from everybody. Thank you so much. Really awesome. So really appreciate this. We view this as one of the most important meetings we have each year. So really appreciate everyone being on here for this, very much so. So, you know, quickly here, a couple